So, welcome to Jumbo IS and welcome to our lecture series called Daily News in Shorts. In this lecture series, we cover a particular day's current affairs in a very short span of time within 20 minutes. The idea behind this lecture series is very simple. We want you to cover your current affairs on a daily basis because current affairs form a very important chunk of your UPSC examination. In fact, all civil services examinations, including state civil ones. Okay, so covering current affairs on a daily basis should be a habit of yours. But you shouldn't spend the entire day reading the newspaper because newspapers can be overwhelming, right? So, through this lecture series, we cover all your important current affairs for the day, only those important news items that should be covered. Not all, only those which are important from the perspective of civil services examination, and we cover those news items within 20 minutes or around 20 minutes, sometimes 5 minutes up and down. Okay, so follow this lecture series regularly because it is your daily dosage of current affairs, and current affairs are very important. Okay, now let's take a look at what topics or what important news items featured in October 26th, 2024's newspaper. So here's a list of topics for our discussion. So in total, we'll be focusing on 5 topics. Okay, number one among them is right to die with dignity. Recently, I mean in 2023, Supreme Court gave an order regarding right to die with dignity. And recently, Health Ministry has released certain guidelines implementing this right to die with dignity. Now, what is this right to die with dignity? What did Supreme Court say? And what are these guidelines released by Health Ministry? So we'll talk about this issue in its entirety. Then, recently a study was published which talked that biodiversity, especially in protected areas like national parks, wildlife sanctuaries, biodiversity in protected areas is declining faster than unprotected areas. Now, that's an anomaly. That's problematic. That means areas which are specifically designed to protect biodiversity are seeing faster decline in biodiversity than areas which are not at all protected by government. Now, this is a problematic situation, so we'll have to discuss this also. Then recently, a particular drug which would reduce Alzheimer's disease or reduce the risk of Alzheimer's disease has been released. Well, that drug has been around for quite some time, has been around for many years, but recent studies have found that that particular drug can reduce the risk for Alzheimer's. So we'll talk about Alzheimer's and that drug. Then another news item in Indian Express as well as in Hindu, which talked about Industry 5.0 or Fifth Industrial Revolution. So what is this Fifth Industrial Revolution? And in the end, we'll talk about India and Germany. Why? Because German Chancellor Olaf Scholz is in India and various bilateral agreements are being signed between India and Germany. So we'll talk about this issue as well. All right. So we'll be focusing our attention on these 5 issues. Let's start our discussion, starting with topic number 1, which is right to die with dignity. Okay. Now, you must have heard about this term called euthanasia. Right? What is euthanasia? Euthanasia is when someone has lost the desire to live, whether because of depression, whether because of mental reasons, or whether because of physical reasons. If someone has a terminal illness and it is becoming difficult for that person to live, maybe he's suffering from a terminal illness or he or she, all right, then that person can end his or her life. Now, when people commit euthanasia, then they end their lives. Now, euthanasia is another term for suicide, okay? And euthanasia is generally for people who have lost the will to live. Now, the thing is that euthanasia can be of 2 types: active euthanasia, passive euthanasia. Now, what is active euthanasia? Suppose there is a person who is suffering from, let's suppose, autoimmune disease, and he cannot walk properly, cannot talk properly, cannot is facing various disabilities, and he doesn't feel that life is worth living anymore. Okay, life is not worth living anymore. That person doesn't feel. He feels that he should end his life. Then, in some countries, it is allowed that he can take a poison injection. Okay, he can ask for active euthanasia to end his life, but only if it is certified that that person is suffering from a terminal illness. It's not for depression. Okay, some countries allow that active euthanasia. What is passive euthanasia? Passive euthanasia is, let's suppose someone is on coma and someone is in coma, I'm sorry, and there is no chance that he is going to revive. In the opinion of doctors, there is no chance that he is going to revive. And currently his life is being supported by ventilator, life support systems, right? If those life support systems are removed, that person would die. And there is no chance that that person would revive. He will come back to life. He is in a vegetative state, coma like state, and his life is being supported by a ventilator. Then through various procedures, through due permissions, those life support systems can be taken off. Okay, those life support systems can be taken off and that person can die. Though that person is not in that condition that he could give a consent or not, but that person can die because there is no scope for revival, plus he's on life support system. Now that is known as passive euthanasia, because what do we mean by passive euthanasia? He's not actively taking any poison, he's just removing, or life support systems are being removed. Okay, so there is difference between active and passive euthanasia. Now in India, passive euthanasia is legal, active euthanasia is not legal. As you all know that suicide is illegal in India, it's a criminal offense. Okay, but what if someone is in a coma like state and is being supported by life support systems? So if you remove those life support systems, if you remove ventilator, then that person can die. That is known as passive euthanasia. But if some person is not feeling well and he wants to take a poison injection, then that would be active euthanasia. Now Supreme Courts in 2011 made it quite clear that active euthanasia would be considered suicide in India and it is not at all allowed. But passive euthanasia is allowed in India. Okay, passive euthanasia is allowed, removal of life support systems. Then in 2018, Supreme Court actually fully legalized passive euthanasia. Okay, and in 2023, Supreme Court gave certain orders which made it easier for people getting passive euthanasia. Now, to implement these orders given by Supreme Court, Health Ministry released guidelines for withdrawal of life support in terminally ill patients. Okay, just to operationalize Supreme Court's 2018 and 2023 orders. Now, as of now, India does not have any law or legislation regarding passive euthanasia. Okay, only Supreme Court's orders exist. And through these Health Ministry guidelines, now it is possible to get passive euthanasia in India. Passive euthanasia is legal in India. All right. So, what is the situation now? As you can see in the Supreme Court, in 2011, in Aruna Shanbag case, Supreme Court allowed passive euthanasia. Okay. In 2018, Common Cause versus Union of India, Supreme Court said that right to die with dignity is a fundamental right under Article 21 of the Constitution. Article 21 of the Indian Constitution states right to life. Okay, so right to die with dignity is part of right to life, Article 21. So right to die with dignity is a fundamental right. That means passive euthanasia is a fundamental right. But Supreme Court gave certain procedures which need to be followed before allowing passive euthanasia. Okay, plus what about the consent of a person for whom you will conduct passive euthanasia? That person would be in coma. How would he tell that I want passive euthanasia or not? Well, in that case, Supreme Court in 2000 gave the concept of living will. Before going for treatment, a person can give in writing that if he gets in coma like situation, then you might remove the plug, you might remove life support system, and I give full consent of passive euthanasia if I become terminally ill and get in a coma like situation. Okay, in 2023, Supreme Court again simplified the procedure to get living wills. Living wills is consent form given by the person himself that if he's in a coma, then you can give him passive euthanasia. Now, through these health ministry guidelines, mechanisms would be in place. Primary or secondary medical boards would be set up at the level of hospital, which will decide whether this case of passive euthanasia should be allowed or not. Plus, a doctor by the district chief medical officer would be nominated, who would decide whether the medical boards have given the right decision or not. When someone would file the application of passive euthanasia, the case would go to these medical boards. Okay, so this proper system is given under guidelines by Health Ministry. Okay, all right. So what you have to remember is you have to remember what is the difference between passive and active euthanasia, and you have to remember these cases. The first case in 2011, Aruna Shanbag case, where passive euthanasia was allowed. In 2018, passive euthanasia was given the name right to die with dignity, and it was made a fundamental right under Article 21. Plus, the concept of living wills was given. In 2023, the procedure, the bureaucratic procedure to get living wills was simplified by Supreme Court. And now, government has released draft guidelines for implementing these orders. All right. Make sense? I hope you understood this. All right. Even if you have not, you can write your doubts in the comment section below. All right. All right. So if you have any doubts, if you have any confusion regarding this issue, please write your doubts. I'll be happy to answer all your doubts. All right. Let's shift to topic number 2. Biodiversity decline in protected areas. Now look, a study was conducted by Natural History Museum based in London. And it said that biodiversity is declining in the world. Of course, everyone knows that plant species are becoming extinct, animal species are becoming extinct, biodiversity on a whole is declining. To prevent decline of biodiversity in the entire world, 1992, an international convention was also signed called Convention on Biodiversity. And every 2 years, countries meet to implement this convention. So globally, there have been many initiatives to protect biodiversity on a global level. But this Natural History Museum study found that what do countries do to protect biodiversity? They designate a particular geographical area as national park, wildlife sanctuary, biodiversity reserve, and take measures to protect biodiversity in these regions. Now, these regions are collectively known as protected areas. But what this study has found is that biodiversity is declining faster in these protected areas as compared to unprotected areas. Those are not protected by the government, for whom government is not taking any action. Look, biodiversity is being protected stringently in national parks. But areas with forest areas which are not national parks, well, government is taking little steps to protect biodiversity there. But still, biodiversity is declining on a faster rate in these protected areas than unprotected areas. Now, this is an anomaly, but this study has found that that is precisely the case. Now, how did they study this? Okay, so there is this thing called biodiversity intactness index. Okay, what this index does is it actually measures the level of biodiversity in a particular region as compared to the biodiversity which should have been in that area had no humans come to that area. Okay, so what was the biodiversity level of that place during pre-modern times? And it is compared with the current biodiversity of that region. So the current biodiversity of that region is compared with the pre-modern biodiversity as it should have been. Okay, so this is biodiversity intactness index. Now, globally, it was found that biodiversity intactness index declined by 1.88% between 2000 to 2020. But in critical biodiversity areas like evergreen forests, wetlands, these are critical biodiversity areas which are critical for the survival of biodiverse species. Okay, it was found that biodiversity declined by 2.1% in protected areas and 1.9% in unprotected areas. That means protected areas are more threatened than unprotected areas for those areas for which no action is being taken. This is an anomaly. And this study has given some reasons behind this factor also. Okay, first reason is that when you create a protected area, let's suppose a national park, your focus is on one particular species. For example, government has created a tiger reserve. So government's focus is on tigers in that region, but that region has other species as well. So because our whole attention is concentrated on protecting tigers, we tend to ignore other species, and that is why many of these protected areas lose their biodiversity because our attention is focused on one or two species. Now this is bad, so we need to change this. This is what the study is saying. Then in some national parks or in some protected areas, government, in order to earn money or boost the economy, is giving oil mining contracts, gas mining contracts, mining contracts. For example, in Africa, Konkwati Duli National Park, the Republic of Congo has given more than 65% of the area for mining. Now, mining activities actually destroy that area. So this is the problem, that though governments have designated these areas as protected areas, they are not taking steps to protect actually. Then climate change is one of the reasons. Well, because of climate change, droughts, wildfires have become more frequent, which is destroying forests. And despite the fact that the governments have designated a particular area as protected area, government is not taking stringent enough steps. So these are the four reasons as to why protected areas are more threatened than unprotected areas. All right? Okay. Now let's move on to our third topic of the day, which is drug for Alzheimer's. Okay. Now look, first of all, you need to know what Alzheimer's disease is. So Alzheimer's disease is basically an old age disease. Okay. What are old age diseases? Well, old age diseases are those diseases which happen in old age because your body is degenerating because of old age. That is why Alzheimer's is known as degenerative disease. Okay. Now, in this disease, people lose their brain functions, memory, thinking ability, social skills, and it is one of the common cause of dementia. Dementia means memory loss. Okay. So old people are at the risk of Alzheimer's, developing Alzheimer's. Now, way back, many years ago, there was this drug developed called semaglutide. It is basically a salt that is added to medicines. Okay. Now, semaglutide is a particular drug that is added in medicines like Ozempic and Wegovy. Now, these are anti-diabetes drugs, Ozempic and Wegovy, and semaglutide is added to it. Okay. Now, the thing with semaglutide is that semaglutide actually controls your blood sugar levels, so you cure your diabetes. And it is also prescribed as a weight loss drug. People lose weight while being on this drug. Okay, so semaglutide is being prescribed as a diabetes drug, as a weight loss drug, but studies have found that it is also beneficial for reducing the risk of Alzheimer's. So if someone in their 40s is taking semaglutide, then chances of them developing Alzheimer's disease in their 60s or 70s drastically reduce. All right, so semaglutide must be having some special properties, right? So what are those properties? So semaglutide was found to significantly lower the risk of developing AD, Alzheimer's disease, compared to other diabetes medicines. Specifically, it was found to reduce risk of first-time Alzheimer's by 40 to 70%. Now, that's a lot. Now, these results were similar for older patients, okay? Both men and women. So, this semaglutide drug works on both men and women and people with obesity, without obesity. So, this drug actually seems to work, okay? Now, you know what semaglutide is, okay? You need to know a bit more about semaglutide, okay? Because questions might be asked. So I'm giving you some extra information. The news item is over. That is what was written in the news article. This was written, this was written. But I'm giving you some extra information because questions might be asked. Okay. So semaglutide, and there is another drug called liraglutide. These are both drugs which belong to a category of drugs called GLP-1 drugs. Now, GLP stands for glucagon-like peptide receptor agonists. Okay, so it is actually called GLP. I'm sorry, GLP-1 RAs, receptor agonist. You don't need to get into the name, just remember the full form if you can cram it. Okay, or else just remember GLP-1 drugs. So, what are basically GLP-1 drugs? GLP-1 drugs are those drugs which reduce blood sugar and energy intake. Okay, so basically, your body has GLP-1 receptor. Okay, this GLP-1 receptor is found on your pancreas and in your brain, basically in your neurons. What this GLP-1 receptor does is it actually helps your body to release insulin just after you have had your meal. So as soon as you eat your food, this GLP-1 receptor gets activated and insulin is released in your body, which reduces your blood sugar levels. Okay, but people who have diabetes have insulin resistance. Okay, they don't develop, or they develop insulin, but their blood glucose levels do not decline. That is why these GLP-1 drugs are given, because these drugs mimic the actions of GLP-1 hormone in your body. So there is this hormone in your body called GLP-1 which activates GLP-1 receptor and releases insulin to reduce blood sugar levels. When this is problematic, this thing in your body is not being taken care of automatically, then you need this drug which actually mimics GLP-1 hormone. Okay, if this sounds complicated, just remember GLP-1 is a class of drugs that lowers blood sugar level and energy intake, and that is why semaglutide, which is a GLP-1 drug, is prescribed for diabetes, for weight loss also. Because if your blood sugar levels are low, you tend to lose weight. You tend to burn more calories. Okay, so this is the case. Now let's move on to our fourth news item, which is Industry 5.0. Okay, so recently a report was published by Procter and Gamble. Okay, it's a big consultancy firm, PwC. They said that many manufacturers, close to 90% of Indian manufacturers, are investing in Industry 5.0. Now, what is Industry 5.0? For that, you need to understand what is Industry 4.0. To understand that, you need to know what is Industry 3.0, then 2.0, then 1.0. Basically, what are these 1.0, 2.0? Okay. So Industry 5.0 means fifth industrial revolution. Industry 4.0 means fourth industrial revolution. Okay. Now, industrial revolution refers to that era under which new technology has completely revolutionized manufacturing. Okay, the first industrial revolution happened in 1784 or early 1800s when steam engine was invented, mechanical machines were invented. So when machines were invented, earlier all the production that happened in factories used to happen through hand. People used to weave textiles through hand. But after the invention of machines, after the invention of steam engine, industrial revolution happened. So this is first industrial revolution. Then electricity was discovered. High volume production, assembly line, cars being manufactured. This is second industrial revolution. Then with the discovery of computers and electronics, third industrial revolution happened. And currently fourth industrial revolution is going on because of internet, AI, big data. This AI, big data, these new technologies, these 21st century technologies are actually revolutionizing manufacturing. And that is why they are known as Industry 4.0. But the problem with Industry 4.0 is that people are scared that AI, big data, Internet of Things are going to automate industrial processes. Okay, it would lead to automation, and automation would reduce the demand for human labor because now machines can do your job. Okay, and even thinking job because of AI. Thinking jobs are also being replaced by machines. Earlier, they used to be done by humans. Now, they say that Industry 4.0 would lead to massive unemployment because the need for human labor has reduced drastically. Okay, and that is why people were scared of Industry 4.0. That is why many people have come out with this new concept called Industry 5.0. Under Industry 5.0, we will use these technologies, but these technologies would be used in sync with human labor. So, human labor would be put at the center. And these technologies won't be used to replace human labor, but to aid and help human labor. This is Industry 5.0. Okay, so it refers to robot and smart machines working alongside people with added resilience and sustainability. Industry 4.0 focuses on these technologies, big data, AI, Internet of Things. Industry 5.0 seeks human, environmental, and social aspects. Basically, workers' well-being, laborers' well-being is at the heart of Industry 5.0. Make sense? So it is a subtly different concept. That's all. That's all you need to know about Industry 5.0. Okay. And in the end, we'll talk about India-Germany relations. Okay. So German Chancellor Olaf Scholz is in India, and he met Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Both these countries held talks and signed 8 bilateral agreements. Okay, both these countries acknowledged their strategic partnership. They acknowledged that they are very good partners and all that. That is not important for you. You need to remember that they signed 8 bilateral agreements, and one such agreement is that for people who want to emigrate to Germany, they want to go to Germany on employment visas and whatnot. Well, Germany has kept a certain quota, okay, in 1 year. That means Germany accepts skilled labor or skilled workers from India, but not more than 20,000 in 1 year. So Germany has increased that quota to 90,000. Now 90,000 Indians under skilled work permit visa can go to Germany and work there. Now this would boost economic relations, people to people contact between India and Germany, but it would help Germany more than India because Germany's population is aging. Okay, close to 27% of the population is above 60. Germany does not have enough people to do jobs. And that is why Germany is inviting young skilled Indians to Germany so that there are people there to perform those jobs, mid-level management jobs, mid-level jobs. Okay, right? So this is the situation. Okay. Plus, they held various talks on Russia-Ukraine war, Israel-Iran war. Many other things were discussed, but those are usual things. This was the main thing that happened between India and Germany. All right. That would be all. With that, we conclude today's session. Thank you so much, everyone. And I'm sure it has added value to your preparation. Now, we have covered Saturday's current affairs in 20 minutes. Okay. But your job is not done yet. If you really want to consolidate Saturday's current affairs, well, you have watched the lecture sincerely. That is given. But you need to revise this lecture also. Okay. So revise this lecture from the PDF file that we are going to provide you for this lecture. In that PDF file, everything that was discussed in this lecture would be mentioned. All you have to do is download this PDF file from our Telegram channel. The link to our Telegram channel is provided in the comment section below. So click on that link, you'll be taken to our Telegram channel. And from there, you can download this PDF file. revise it, take 20 to 25 minutes more. And after that, Saturday's current affairs would be done and dusted. You wouldn't have to worry about that. All right. Okay. On that note, I'll thank you guys and sign off. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. And I'll see you next time with next day's current affairs. So stay tuned. Thank you.